This video is intended to introduce you to the Vertimix series of mixing systems. This is the control enclosure for essentially all of the different versions of the Vertimix mixer. Here you see a dual port, dual valve version of the system. The only difference between the different versions is the number of valves. So you can have 1, 2, 3, or 4 valves in this enclosure. This enclosure can either be 304 stainless steel or it can be fiberglass reinforced plastic. If the enclosure is going to be inside a weatherproof building, you can put it in a FRP enclosure for less money if that's important to you. If it's outside, then you're going to need a 304 stainless steel enclosure with a heater. Okay, so to look at this components of this mixer, let's start with the upper right side. This is the general area where the power supply is introduced into the enclosure. We supply a 1/2-inch cord grip and an 8-foot long cord and with plug-in to use if you wish to, or you can hardwire it with conduit. We don't put the entry port in there because some utilities want to have the power supply come in the bottom of the enclosure. Some want the power supply to come in the side or the top. But wherever it enters into the enclosure, it's going to be landed on the component at the top right side of the enclosure. This is the supplementary switch. This is going to carry the 115 volt, 15 amp power supply to the heater, which is on the very left top of that row of components. That heater is a 50-watt heater. You can see the red thermostat attached to it. This heater is going to be wired for 115 volts. The heater will come on when the ambient temperature gets below 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will, when it gets warmer than that, there is a buffer lag for the off time, but you probably want the heater to be powered at all times, because even in the spring or in the fall, you can get condensation inside an enclosure that's carrying air that's different than the air that's inside the enclosure, and so the heater will keep condensation from forming. Next to the supplemental power supply is a 24 volt DC power supply that will feed the PLC, which is immediately to the left of it, and also 24 volts that go down to the bottom of the enclosure where the Ross valves, pulsing valves, are. I like to keep power at a low rate because that helps with employee safety, and I also try to keep the equipment as simple as possible. The PLC is Unitronics V120. we have a separate video that's going to be available to you where we will show you how to set up the PLC. This PLC is really drawing raves from the people that use it now. There's a main screen, and there are 3 menu items, and it's very simple to operate, and it's very important that all operators, anybody that touches this system, understand how this is going to work. And that's one of the reasons we did this video, to help you review whenever you need that review. When the program is in operation, in the upper right part of that screen, you'll see an indication of which valve is firing. It'll say valve 1 or valve 2 in this case, since this is a dual port system. And when you see valve 1 flash on the PLC screen, at the same time you should see a red LED on that valve flash. That tells you that you are getting a signal from the PLC to the solenoid of the valve, and when that happens, then that valve should pulse. One of the ways that this mixing system conserves energy and minimizes the size of piping and expense, essentially, is that 2 valves never pulse at the same time at the same instance. So 1 valve will pulse, shooting a pulse of about 3 cubic foot of air through the valve, and then, depending on the interval time that you set in the settings of the PLC, then the second valve will pulse. This, again, minimizes the amount of piping and the size of piping that's required out into the tank. The air inlet to this enclosure is on the right. You can see a 90-degree bend, and all air comes into the enclosure and out of the enclosure through the bottom. That allows the control enclosure to be to use as small a footprint as possible within an area that it's mounted on. So the air comes in the pipe in the right, and then the air goes out of the bottom of the Ross control valve to each of the plates that they're connected to. There are other videos that will be provided to show how to take the valve apart and how to do simple maintenance. This control enclosure, as configured, has virtually no maintenance in it whatsoever. There are no filters or anything that have to be changed. Our experience has been, as long as you have clean, dry air coming into this enclosure, these valves will stay clean. Maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, you'll have to take the valve apart, take a cloth and clean it, and then put it back together. So this is an introduction to this brand, Vertimix, of Bell Mixing Systems. Bell Mixing Systems is a subsidiary of ICS Bell Industries. Thank you for watching this. Be sure to look at the PLC tutorial so that you can understand how it operates. Thank you very much.